Patrice Nelson moved through the pre-dawn darkness like she had every morning for 7 years. The bus stop bathed in the dull orange of a Houston street lamp. She clutched her daughter's mittened hand for as long as she could, her heart wrenched by Zuri's sleepy, hopeful gaze. "Will you be home for dinner tonight, Mama?" Zuri asked, always gentle, always forgiving. Patrice smiled, even as the lie caught at her throat. "I'll do my best, baby." She kissed her daughter's forehead, pressing her cheek into the softness of Zuri's crown. She needed this job. Brookside Hardware paid just enough to keep them in their narrow apartment and the lights on. But this year, Christmas meant something different. Zuri was 10 now, old enough to notice what her mother's absence cost them both. Brookside Hardware was one of those neighborhood stores that everyone depended on, but few truly noticed. Mr. Randall Banks, the owner, kept it running with ironclad rules and an ever-present sense of suspicion. Patrice remembered her first day, how he'd eyed her resume, his lips curling as he asked, "You plan on running off after 6 months like the rest?" She'd promised she was in it for the long haul. She'd kept that promise through power outages, summer floods, and a pandemic that thinned the staff to a skeleton crew. Patrice stayed when others fled, covered shifts no one else wanted, and never once left Banks in the lurch. Her co-workers were a rotating cast, teenagers, retirees, young parents on the edge. Patrice was the one constant, the one who taught new hires the quirks of the old registers and where the leak was in aisle 5. At first, she'd been Miss Patrice, the wise, funny big sister who brought in muffins on slow mornings. But over the years, the mood shifted. Resentment crept in, spurred by whispers that she was Banks's favorite, that she made the rest look lazy. Patrice laughed it off, but the words left bruises. She noticed co-workers huddled together, glancing her way, their laughter brittle as old paint. December hit hard that year. The store was short-staffed, one cashier out sick, 2 others quit just before Thanksgiving. The holiday rush pressed in. Patrice found herself working 12-hour shifts, her feet aching so badly she could barely make it up the stairs to her apartment each night. She started missing Zuri's bedtime stories, the rituals they'd shared since Zuri could talk. Still, she didn't complain. "This is what being a good mother looks like," she whispered to herself, tears hot in her eyes after yet another voicemail from Zuri. "I miss you, Mama. Can we bake cookies soon?" The schedule for Christmas week was posted on a Thursday. Patrice's stomach dropped. She was assigned both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, along with back-to-back closing shifts through New Year's. She forced herself to wait until the store cleared out, then approached Mr. Banks. He sat at his desk, feet up, counting receipts. "Excuse me, Mr. Banks, can I talk to you about the holiday schedule?" He didn't look up. "You have a problem with it?" She steadied her voice. "I was hoping to have Christmas evening off for my daughter. Just dinner. I can work the morning." He cut her off, voice cold as sleet. "You want special treatment because you're a single mom? Holidays don't exist here. Only losers value family over the job." The humiliation burned in Patrice's chest. She thanked him anyway and walked away, feeling the eyes of her co-workers boring into her back. Patrice tried to swap shifts, pleading quietly with co-workers. Tanya, a college student, shook her head. "I got family flying in." Ronnie, who owed Patrice countless favors, shrugged. "Sorry, Pat. Already got plans." Even Latoya, once her friend, avoided her gaze, mumbling something about holiday pay. Patrice felt the isolation closing in, each polite refusal a small betrayal. She could sense the gossip growing, the stories about how Patrice is always asking for favors but never covers anyone else. She started eating her lunch alone, shoulders hunched in the break room as laughter drifted in from the front counter. At home, Patrice tried to hold it together for Zuri's sake. She decorated their apartment with thrift store garlands and handmade ornaments. Each night she promised, "Next year will be better." But even Zuri, with her open heart, grew quieter. One evening she asked, "Why do you always have to work, Mama? Don't they know you have a family?" Patrice kissed her daughter's cheek and tucked her in, then spent the next hour crying silently on the bathroom floor, her hands trembling with guilt and frustration. The week before Christmas, Mr. Banks called Patrice into his office. He closed the door, a thin smile on his lips. You look tired, Nelson. Hope you're not getting soft. She bit back her anger, forced herself to nod. He slid a list of tasks across the desk. Inventory, restocking, mopping, all piled atop her regular duties. Don't disappoint me. He paused. Plenty of people would kill for your hours, you know. Patrice left the office shaking. She heard LaToya mutter, "Guess she's getting another bonus," as she passed. Patrice wanted to scream. No one saw how hard she worked, how much she sacrificed. They only saw a woman who wouldn't quit. Christmas Eve was gray and icy, the kind of Houston cold that settles in your bones. Patrice's hands were raw from cleaning the salt off the entry mats. Customers grumbled, co-workers snapped at each other, and Banks's mood was poisonous. Midway through the shift, Tanya stormed out after a spat with a customer, leaving Patrice to cover both registers. By closing, Patrice's head pounded, and her phone buzzed with text from Zuri. "Are you coming home yet? I saved you a cookie." Patrice texted back, "I'll be there soon, sweetheart." She didn't get home until after midnight, slipping into the dark apartment to find Zuri asleep at the table, a single broken cookie on a plate. Christmas morning dawned, colder still. Patrice left early, whispering a promise to Zuri that she'd be home by dinner. She wore her best blouse, hair pressed and neat, hoping the day would pass quietly. The store was almost empty, most people home with their families. Mr. Banks was in an especially foul mood, snapping at Patrice for every imagined mistake. At noon, he ordered her to stay late and close. Patrice's heart clenched. "Please, Mr. Banks, I promised my daughter I'd be home tonight. I've worked every holiday. Please." He laughed. "You're fired. Get out. I don't need losers who can't prioritize this store." Shock paralyzed Patrice as Banks's words echoed in her head. She staggered to the break room, packed her things in a plastic bag, and avoided the eyes of her co-workers. No one said goodbye. No one offered comfort. Outside, sleet stung her cheeks as she waited for the bus. She texted Zuri, "I'm coming home." When she arrived, Zuri wrapped her in a silent hug. Patrice buried her face in her daughter's hair, letting the grief shake her shoulders until she could barely stand. The weeks after Christmas blurred into a gray monotony of disappointment. Bills piled up. Patrice spent her days searching for work, cleaning houses, babysitting, standing in line at job fairs. Former co-workers ignored her calls. Even LaToya, whom she'd once confided in, ghosted her completely. The loneliness was brutal. Patrice's sense of worth shrank with each rejection letter and missed meal. She clipped coupons, rationed food, and canceled Zuri's dance classes. Their world shrank to 4 rooms and the flickering blue of a second-hand TV. Patrice kept her suffering private. She answered her mother's worried calls with half-truths, kept up a brave front for Zuri. "We're just having an adventure," she'd say, trying to turn ramen noodles and candlelight into something magical. But at night, after Zuri fell asleep, Patrice let the silence swallow her. She questioned every decision, every sacrifice, every ounce of loyalty she'd given to a job and a boss that never saw her as anything more than a means to an end. One afternoon, desperate for work, Patrice answered a call from Mrs. Bowman, an older woman she'd once helped at Brookside. "My porch steps are falling apart. Honey," Mrs. Bowman said, "I can pay a little if you got the time." Patrice borrowed a toolkit and spent the day sanding, hammering, and painting, her muscles aching, but her mind clear for the first time in weeks. Mrs. Bowman brought out lemonade and watched Patrice work. "You ever think about running a place yourself?" she asked. Patrice shook her head. "Who would hire someone like me?" Mrs. Bowman's smile was soft. "Someone who knows the value of hard work." As winter melted into spring, Patrice kept busy with odd jobs, painting fences, organizing garages, running errands for neighbors. Word spread quietly about her dependability, her kindness. She never turned down a request, no matter how small. It wasn't enough to pay all the bills, but it helped. Patrice learned to stretch every dollar, to make a meal out of next to nothing. Zuri, ever resilient, started helping too, sweeping porches and carrying groceries. The bond between mother and daughter deepened in those lean, uncertain months. One Saturday, Mrs. Bowman asked Patrice to join her for coffee. "My son's opening a hardware store across town," she said. "He's got big ideas, but no one's steady to run the floor." Patrice sipped her coffee, wary. "I'm just a cashier, Mrs. Bowman. I'm no manager." Mrs. Bowman shook her head. "You're more than that. I've seen you care for people. That's what makes a business last." The words rattled inside Patrice's chest for days. She wanted to believe them, but the voice of Mr. Banks, the old, cruel voice, still whispered, "Loser." Against her own doubt, Patrice agreed to meet Marcus Bowman. Marcus was younger than she expected, sharp-dressed but warm, his handshake confident. He listened, really listened, as Patrice told him about her time at Brookside. She didn't hide her firing, didn't sugarcoat the pain. Marcus nodded. "I want this place to be different. Family matters. Community matters. You'll have flexibility, real pay, a stake in how things run." Patrice tried not to hope. But when Marcus handed her the keys on her first day, she wept quietly in the storage closet, overwhelmed with gratitude and fear. Oak Street Supply opened in early summer. Patrice worked harder than ever, learning new systems, training staff, balancing the register. Marcus was true to his word. He respected her boundaries, encouraged her to take time with Zuri, and trusted her decisions. Patrice hired a team that reminded her of her old self. Single moms, students, people overlooked by other stores. She made sure no one missed birthdays or school recitals. She remembered every slight she'd suffered and built a workplace that healed those wounds for others. At home, things improved. Zuri started a new school, made friends, and rejoined her dance team. Patrice paid off past due bills, saved a little each month, and even splurged on a weekend trip to Galveston. She smiled more, laughed more, allowed herself to rest. Sometimes, the old fear would surface, the fear that it would all disappear. But then Patrice would breathe, remind herself that she had survived the worst. That autumn, Patrice ran into LaToya at the grocery store. LaToya looked tired, harried, her smile brittle. "Banks still giving folks hell?" Patrice asked gently. LaToya rolled her eyes. "He can't keep staff. Place is falling apart." Patrice nodded, but felt no satisfaction. She wished LaToya well and walked away, her heart lighter for letting go of old resentments. Brookside Hardware's decline became neighborhood gossip. Customers complained about poor service and empty shelves. Banks tried to poach workers from Oak Street Supply, but none accepted. He'd built a legacy of fear and loneliness. Now he reaped it alone. Patrice never gloated, never spoke ill of him. She simply went about her work, leading by quiet example. Christmas rolled around again, bright and crisp. Patrice closed the store early, loaded up the car with groceries, and drove home as the sun set over Houston. She cooked Zuri's favorite meal, set the table with candles and laughter. That night, for the first time in years, Patrice didn't have to set an alarm, didn't have to explain her absence. She watched Zuri dance around the living room, joy glowing on her daughter's face, and felt peace root itself deep inside her. After dinner, Patrice sat alone on the porch, sipping tea, the sounds of Zuri's laughter drifting through the screen door. She thought about all she'd lost, her job, her old friends, the illusions of safety. But she thought, too, about all she'd gained. Dignity, freedom, a home filled with love. No headlines marked her comeback. No one cheered from the sidelines. But she didn't need them. Her story belonged to her and Zuri alone. As the neighborhood settled into quiet, Patrice tucked Zuri into bed. "I'm proud of you, Mama," Zuri whispered, sleepily clutching her mother's hand. "I'm proud of us both," Patrice replied, her voice steady and sure. She stood by the window for a long time after, watching the moon rise above Houston, her heart full. Finally, wholly, quietly, at peace. In the end, Patrice's triumph wasn't something the world would notice. It was in the way she walked, head held high, through Oak Street Supply each morning. It was in Zuri's laughter, the warmth of their kitchen, the small joys they claimed back day by day. Patrice had chosen love over fear, family over a job that never valued her. And in the soft, uncelebrated glow of that choice, she found everything she needed. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.